This video is part of the book Statistical Modeling with R that I wrote and was published by Oxford University Press in 2023. In today's video, I'm going to talk about a linear mixed model, starting with the exploratory data analysis to be followed by the frequentist model fitting and the Bayesian model fitting. The codes and data to run this analysis are in the website shown in the screen. Let's motivate the analysis first. So the goal is to study the students' gain in math achievement. The response variable is going to be called math gain in relation to sex and the knowledge, the background knowledge of young students in the kindergarten across 99 schools. Therefore, we have a numerical response variable, math gain, a categorical explanatory variable, sex, and another numerical explanatory variable, math kind. And we have the 99 schools. So I imported the data set. The data set contains many variables, of which we are going to use the ones shown in blue as explanatory variables and the ones shown in red as the response variable. So I start by transforming and standardizing the explanatory variables. Transforming because, for instance, the variable sex and the variable school ID are labeled as integers, and we should use them as factors. This is exactly what we do, and I scale and center the numerical explanatory variable for reasons that will be explained later on. So I use as usual the cumulative distribution function plots and the QQ plots to assess whether the normal distribution can be used to model the response variable. And here I show the fit of the response variable to a normal distribution, which is pretty good in the cumulative distribution function plot, and it's reasonably good but not excellent for the QQ plot, showing only deviations in a few of the more than 1,000 points that we have for this response variable. I only consider one probability distribution function because this is the only common probability distribution function that can be used to model negative real values and positive real values. Here I show a little bit of the structure of the data set. This is the number of children. The children are the sampling units, the elementary unit in which we measure all variables in this study. This is the number of children in each of the 99 schools. So we see that for some of the schools we have 18 children, but for others we have only 2. So there is a very unbalanced distribution of children across the schools. So here is the number of schools with a given number of children. For instance, this says that we have 11 schools with data for 10 children, and we have 3 schools with data for 27 children. So I'm going to focus on this school for which we have more than 18 or more points in order to assess the relationship between the explanatory variables and the response variable. So here I'm going to show the relationship between the response and the explanatory variable for the 16 schools that had more than 17 children. So here are these schools. Here are this is a total of 4 by 4, 16 schools, and here we see that the relationship between the explanatory variable and the response variable, and with different colors for the genders. Here we see that essentially the same relationship in school number 10, the same relationship between for each of the sexes. We see a difference in school 11, and a big difference both in slope and intercept for the school 27, and even a disparity between for the different genders in school 82. So from this rather fast exploratory data analysis, we see that there is in effect a relationship between the response variable and the explanatory variable, that the relationship varies with the sexes or genders, and it also. So the statistical model is that the response variable follows a normal distribution with a given mean and a given variance that will be estimated, and that the mean for each sex is the intercept for each sex and the slope relating the numerical explanatory variable with the mean of the response variable. This is for each sex. Note that both the slope and the intercepts may or may not be different for each of the two sexes. These are the fixed or population level effects. But we also noticed that there was variation in the intercepts and the slopes relating the relationship between the numerical explanatory variable and the response variable across schools. And it's quite likely that children of a given school are more similar to each other, are more correlated in the values of the response variable, more similar to each other than compared to children with other schools. This may arise, for instance, as a result of having similar causal processes affecting the values of the response variable within each school and compared to other schools. So we should quantify and in a way control the variation across a school whose comparison is not the main goal of this analysis. I recall that the main goal of this analysis is to uncover the relationship between this numerical explanatory variable mathkind and the response variable math gain, and to study the variation across sexes. What we do now is that we control the variation among schools, the variation among schools, because all the data within a given school are not true statistical replicates, because the values are likely to be correlated to each other within a given school. So school ID is going to be modeled as a group or random as a group effect or random effect, and because the intercepts and slope vary within across schools, the school ID effect will consist of differentials of, that is, values positive or negative, that will tell us how much the intercept and the slope for each school differ from the fixed or population level effects that are valid for the entire data set. The statistical model, therefore, is going to be amended from the previous equation as follows. For each sex, we would have the population level effect. This is the intercept the intercept or fixed effect. This is the slope or population level effect for the relating mathkind with the mean of the response variable. And this B0j and B1j are the differentials of slopes and intercept that will tell us how the jth school differs from the population level effects. So these differentials B0j and B1j are going to be modeled using a multivariate normal distribution with a mean of 0, telling us that on average the average school will correspond to the population level effect, and there will be a variation of these differentials. Some values are going to be negative, some values of these differentials of slope and these differentials of intercepts are going to be, some are going to be negative, some are going to be positive, that is, some are going to be smaller, some are going to be larger than the population level effects. And this covariance here is because these differentials of slopes and intercepts are likely to be correlated with each other. So the Frequentist model fitting, here we indicate the response variable and the population or fixed level effects, and here we indicate the group, the random effects. Here we indicate 1 plus mathkind. Mathkind is a numerical explanatory variable, and this vertical bar, and after which we put school ID. This says that we are going to estimate the differentials of slopes and the differential of intercepts for each school. So we feed the model M2, whose summary is the following. So we have two main parts of the summary: the random effects and the fixed effects. So let's see each in turn. So the random effects, we have the variance of the intercepts, telling us how much these differentials of the 99 schools differ from the population level effect, and these we see a variance for the numeric associated with the numerical value, the numerical explanatory variable. These are the variance of the intercept of the slopes, and we see here that the variance of the intercepts is far larger, more than twice larger than the variance of the slopes. So first of all, we see the variance of the around the mean of the response variable. This is called the residual variable. This is the estimate of this parameter. And here we see the way in which we were modeling these differentials of slopes and intercepts, with a variance and a covariance. This variance of the intercepts corresponds to this parameter. The variance of the slopes corresponds to this parameter, and the covariance here is not shown directly, but is shown as a correlation. Let's recall that the correlation is a scaled covariance. Please have a look at any book that will show it to you. And we also have the fixed effects. So we recall first of all that there are two sexes, sex 0 and sex 1. Sex 0 is going to be the reference level for the categorical explanatory variable sex. So for each sex we may be able to write the same equation shown in the previous screen, or rather a re-expression of this, which is the following. So we have here the population level, the intercept for the reference sex. This is which is going to be 57.0 with a standard error of 1.9. This p-value tells us that this coefficient with this standard error is statistically significant from significantly different from 0. This delta beta 0 is the differentials of intercept between sex 0 and sex 1. This is the value of minus 1.24. This tells us that the intercept for sex 1 is 1.24 units smaller than the intercept of the reference sex. And this p-value says here is that these differentials of intercepts, this population level parameter, is not statistically significantly different from 0. So here we see mathkind, which is a numerical explanatory variable. This is the slope of the reference sex, and this p-value here says that this slope estimated with this standard error is significantly different from 0. So here we see the interaction between the numerical explanatory variable and the categorical explanatory variable. This is let's recall the analysis of covariance shown in previous videos and chapters, and this tells us that the slope for the sex 1 is 1.9 units higher than the slope of the reference sex, and that this p-value here of 0.28 is telling us that this difference is not significantly different from 0. It's not 0, it's just that it is not significantly different from 0. Let's have a closer look at the estimated parameters. So for the sex of reference, we might write the following equation, in which we have the population level effects in Greek letters for a given sex, and the group level effects or random level effects for each school's B0 and B1. So these are the parameters of the fixed level effects. Let's focus just on the sex of reference. So for the sex of reference, we found an intercept of 57.5 and an intercept of minus 17.66. So we could also ask the RANF is amounts for the random effects. This is a long list that has the 99 schools. Let's focus just for the sake of the example in one of the schools, the school number 2. So this is telling us that for the school number 2, the intercept is 11.23 units higher than the population or fixed level effect, and that the slope is and that the slope for the differential of slope for school number 2 is minus 5.0 7 units smaller than the population level effects. If we actually ask for the coefficients, if we add 57.5 plus 11.23, this is going to be the coefficient, the slope, and the intercept and the slope, sorry, the other way around, the intercept and the slope for the reference sex of for the school number 2. So B0J is how much the intercept of the school J deviates from the fixed or population level effects, and B1J is how much the slope of the school J deviates from the fixed or population level effects. That is telling us the overall relationship between this numerical explanatory variable mathkind and the mean of the response variable. So we can obtain a table actually for the estimated parameters in this model. We have the effect is called here fixed and random. These are for the fixed level effects. These are just these coefficients that we show and analyze in the previous screen. And here we have the 95% confidence intervals. Here we have the other term, the standard deviation of the intercept, the standard deviation of the slopes, the correlation between the intercept and the slopes, and the standard deviation of the response variable. So for the random of group effects, we can show a table with the following equation, with the following coefficients. In here we have the equation for the random intercept, the random slope, the standard error of the random intercept, and the standard error of the random slope for each of the corresponding schools, which we can plot for a better depiction. So here, order in increasing value of the random intercept, we see that there is a set of schools that have negative differentials of slopes. Their slopes are smaller than the fixed level effect or population level effect, and there are some schools whose differentials of intercepts are higher than the population or fixed level effect. Here we see and the bar here correspond to the standard errors. Here we see the differentials of slope for the schools here in the same order, increasing order of magnitude of the random intercepts, and in the final plot we see the weak correlation minus 0.28 of the random intercepts and the random slope. This minus 0.28 is this weak negative correlation between these two group or random level effect parameters. So we can assess the goodness of fit of the model to the data using, as usual, the package Broom. And we generate a table, a data frame, if you wish, with as many rows as data points. Here is just showing the first row, and we find the numerical, all the variables involved in analysis, the fitted values, the residuals, the Cook distances, and a few other things that we are not going to use, from which we make the following plots. And also we can obtain with another package, the package HLM, the Cook distances for each school. That is, we are going to assess also how sensitive are the parameter estimates if we delete all data from a given school. And the plots that we are going to use to assess the goodness of fit of the model to the data are the following. So first of all, we see the residuals against the fitted values. We see by and large a random scatter here and a good mixing between the values of one of the two for the two sexes. Likewise, we see the same thing when plotting the residuals against the values of the numerical explanatory variable. The majority, but not all, of the residuals happen to be close to the line of perfect fit, with a few points deviating. Let's recall that we have 1,190 points, so the number of points deviating from the line of perfect fit is rather small. In terms of the Cook distance, telling us the sensitivity of each of the influence of each point to the values of the estimated parameters. We see that there are a few points that might be of interest to have a look, for instance the point 500 and so, and that there are some schools that happen to be an undue influence on the values of the estimated parameters. We also assess here the whether the differentials of slopes and differentials of intercepts follow a normal distribution as it was assumed in the original model, and we see that by and large the model has a very good fit to the data. So we can also obtain what is called the R2, the R square, that for mixed models come with two parts, the conditional and the marginal. The marginal is the percentage of the variation of the response variable explained by the fixed effects, and the conditional corresponds to the percentage of the variation of the response variable explained by both the fixed and the random effects. The difference between the two corresponds to the percentage of variation explained by the random effects. And we see that by and large it is the fixed effects, the ones that are more important in explaining the relationship between the explanatory variables and the response variables. So we can communicate the model results by using, as usual, the conditional curves, and here we can obtain the predicted relationship, including both fixed and random effects. This is why the band of the confidence plots is rather wide, and that we see all the points, and here we see the observed points for each of the sexes, and we can see the 99 different straight lines, one per school, that were also obtained as part of this model. So it is very interesting to point out that even for those schools that we saw for which we had very few data points, this mixed model allow us to obtain overall relationship between these the response variable and the numerical explanatory variable, and we also obtain a corrected relationship between the response variable and the numerical explanatory variable with one equation per school, even for those schools for which we had very few data points, and this was obtained for each of the two sexes. So in terms of the Bayesian model fitting, the model is the same as before. Here we have the population level effects. Here we have the differential between the intercepts between the reference sex and the other sex. Here we have the population level slope, and the differential for the reference sex and the differential for the other sex. And here we have the group level effects. We obtain we express the formula in the same way that was explained before. Here is the population level effects, and here are the group level effects with respect to a categorical explanatory variable, which is the school ID. So here we indicate the random the differentials of intercepts, and here we indicate the differentials of slopes with respect to this variable. These are the prices that need to be defined. So let's realize that first here are the prices that need to be defined for the fixed for the population level effects, the intercept, the slope of the reference sex, the differentials of slope population differential of slope from the reference sex, the differential of intercept for the reference sex, which is this parameter, and the variance of the response variable here. We also have the variance covariance matrix of the group level effects can be decomposed using what is known as the Cholesky decomposition into a product of three matrices composed by the standard deviations, and the central matrix, if you wish, with the correlations. This is why we have here the standard deviation of the intercept with respect to the school ID variable and the standard deviation of the differentials of slopes for the school ID variable and the correlation between the two. Here we see we're going to set priors for some parameters, and I'm just going to recall what a new probability distribution, probably unknown to you, is the LKJ, the Lewandowski, K, and Jordan distribution. And the priors to be used, I defined white priors for the differentials of slopes, differentials of intercepts, and for the differentials of slopes, and I defined a given prior for the correlation between the group level intercepts and the group level slopes. So I'm going to use this LKJ distribution to define the prior correlation, the prior for the correlation between the slope and the intercepts. This LKJ probability distribution functions like a set of stacked beta distributions, and here are the values, potential values for this distribution. We can use that range between a U-shaped distribution and a uniform distribution. So I fitted the model, and the fitted model with the formula as before. These are the marginal posterior distributions of the model parameters and the metrics of the convergence of the algorithm. First of all, we see the group level parameters and the population level parameters, and the parameter that is related to, that is the sigma, which is the standard deviation of the response variable. In all cases, we have their r hat values close to 1, indicating that these chains, the three chains used, have converged to a common posterior distribution, and the large values of the effective sample sizes suggest that many of the values retained in the different chains allow a reasonable inference for each of the parameters. So let's have a look at some of the posterior distributions. Here are for the population level effects. We indeed see that the three chains have converged to a common posterior distribution for each of the parameters, and that for all the the same parameters, we have plenty of values with a very small correlation, perhaps with the difference of one, with the exception of one of the chains for one of the parameters, which is of no worries at this point. So we can assess the goodness of fit of the model to the data using the Dunn-Smyth residuals obtained with the package Dharma using the posterior predictive distribution. Here is the posterior predictive distribution that we use with the with the command create Dharma to generate the Dunn-Smyth residuals that are going to be converted into a normal distribution with the final command and stored in this data frame. And so we then create a data frame for the input of the residual analysis by putting the explanatory variables, the fitted or predicted values by the model, and the Pareto K coefficients that will be analogous to the Cook distances, in that it will tell us the importance of each data point for the posterior distributions of the fitted parameters. We can also obtain the Bayesian R square, which is a percentage of the variation of the response variable explained by the model. And in the book, I made a comparison of models with different random or group effects for both the Frequentist and Bayesian model, but I chose to omit this comparison for the sake of brevity in this video. Please have a look of it in the book if you wish to know more. So the plots showing the results of the residual analysis indicate by and large a very good fit of the model to the data, because we see a very clearly random scatter of the converted Dunn-Smyth residuals when plotting the residuals against the fitted and the residuals against the explanatory variables. These residuals do indeed have a normal distribution, as they should when the model fits well, and the group level differentials of intercepts and of slopes have by and large are close to a normal distribution as they were modeled. In terms of the Pareto k-coefficients, while for most of the data points we do have values in the very good range, for a very few 1, 2, 3, 4 values, we have values in the worrisome part, so perhaps we should have a look at these specific values. But all in all, I deem that it's very unlikely that 4 or 5 points in the worrisome part of the Pareto k-coefficients are going to dismantle the model that here was fitted, and so we probably should use this model for inference, to make any inference about this data. So to communicate the model results, we can show several plots. First of all, we can show the posterior distributions of the population level effects here in the plot A. We can show the group effect in intercept and the group effect in slope. I recall that in the Bayesian statistical framework, we obtain a true posterior distribution, not a point, a true posterior distribution for each of the group level differentials of intercepts and for each of the group level differentials of slopes. We obtain a true posterior distribution. Here are the 99 plotted, the 99 posterior distributions of the differentials of intercept and the differentials of slope. Here I'm just plotting the mean values in increasing order for the group intercept and for the group slope, and here is the 95% credible interval, not the standard error as in the previous fitting. This is the 95% credible interval associated with each of these posterior distributions that you are seeing in each of the plots. We also show the covariation between the group intercept and the group slope by taking the mean of these posterior distributions and show the weak relationship that we had seen before. The conditional curves we can obtain only using the population level effects or using the population and group level effects. This is why the width of these bands is quite larger here in plot B compared to plot A. And we can also make conditional curves for each of these schools. I only chose 3 of these schools here, the schools 11, 33 and 93, for which you see the actual data and the conditional curve for each of the schools. So we can, because this is a Bayesian model, we can obtain PP checks. We see that our model predicts the observed density curve as a typical realization. The model is more successful in predicting the standard deviation of the response variable for one of the sexes, but not for the other. And the model is and the converse occurs when we aim to predict the maximum. So I recall that these PP checks are quite useful, quite interesting, and you should learn a lot more than I have been explaining about them as a means of assessing the quality of the strength of the predictive ability of a model for certain features of the data that are of interest for decision-making processes. So in this video, I fitted linear mixed models in the Frequentist and Bayesian frameworks. Started with an exploratory data analysis and the Frequentist and the Bayesian model fitting. The data and codes to run this analysis are in the website, and I thank you for your attention, and I hope you found this video interesting.